All right, we're back. Awesome. So we're doing a live stream today on. We just want to help people get started, or developers who are looking to use JavaScript to build their first Battlesnake. We just want to do a little bit of a tutorial stream on how to get up and running using some of the resources that we make available and some of the services that are out there to help you get started. So. We're going to be focusing primarily on JavaScript and Repl.it. I'll talk a little bit about why in a second. But first of all, we want to kind of kick this off talking about, let's just do this here. There we go. Talk a little bit about what Battlesnake is, why it exists, and why you might want to get involved with it, and then also talk about the technical details so that you understand what we're programming once we get into the programming part, and what the goals there are. So let's dive in here. Let's swap screens. Okay, we'll switch over to this view. Awesome. So this is the getting started with JavaScript and Repl.it tutorial. It should be maybe half an hour or so, give or take, depending on how the actual programming goes. We'll see how it goes when we get there. So we're just going to start by talking a little bit about what Battlesnake is, what the rules and objectives are of the game, as well as the API and how you actually program a Battlesnake to play the game on your behalf. Then we'll take a look at the starter projects that are available, which are a bunch of open source repos on GitHub. That are they're intended to give you sort of all the boilerplate that you need to get started with Battlesnake, but not necessarily provide any intelligence to actually how to play the game and how to strategize. So it gets you started really quickly and gets you to the fun part where you're actually programming your Battlesnake to move around the board. And then we're going to try to do build the Battlesnake live using the JavaScript starter project and Repl.it. So what is Battlesnake? Battlesnake is an online programming game played by developers all over the world. I think we've had developers from over 30 or 35 countries participate in our events and tournaments. We've been doing this for over 5 years now, running various events, tournaments, and developer hackathon sort of stuff. If you're interested in what we do and you'd like to either try programming a snake, which is a lot of fun, regardless of what level of programmer you are and what experience and what languages and what technologies you know. It's a lot of fun to try. You can try to play it at battlesnake.com. Or if you want to get involved in some of the other stuff we do, go check it out. And we're pretty accessible. There's a Slack community. There's a Discord community. We're on GitHub and all the sort of usual places. We're also here on Twitch regularly, so you can catch us live here as well. Let's talk about the game and the rules and objectives. So Battlesnake at its core is an autonomous survival game. So your individual players are not playing the game in real time. What you're doing is you are programming a web server specifically to play the game on your behalf. And so it's all about the strategies you implement and how clean and how optimal you can code and how you can think about the problems. And so it's very much a programming game based around the sort of survival concept. Each Battlesnake moves around the board independently, attempting to find food and avoid elimination as long as possible. This means it's a multiplayer game. There are multiple Battlesnakes on the board at any given time, and they're all vying for space and health and positioning to try to be the last one alive. And everyone's objective, is to survive longer than your opponents. So everyone's playing the same game, everyone has the same information, and it's just a matter of who's strategizing the best and who's looking far enough into the future to figure out who can outthink and outlast and outsurvive their opponents. So the game itself has sort of 3 core rules, or at least considerations, but it's all very simple. Every turn of the game, your snake will move either up, down, left, or right. So it'll move in this grid pattern. And every time your Battlesnake moves, you're going to lose 1 health. Your Battlesnake starts out with with a set number, a set amount of health. It's going to slowly tick down on every turn. If your Battlesnake reaches 0 health, then you are eliminated, so you're going to lose the game. to prevent this from happening, every time that your Battlesnake collides head on with one of these red discs, these food pieces, you're going to be restored to full health, but also your snake's going to get 1 unit longer. So this means that it's going to be more difficult for you to maneuver around the board. It's going to be more difficult for other snakes to maneuver around you, and eventually you're gonna take up so much space that someone's gonna have to get eliminated. So that's sort of the core mechanic: is you have battle snakes that are battling for food, battling for positioning, and trying to outlast each other. Other things to consider. The game board is bounded, so if you move beyond the bounds of the game, if you move outside of the grid, your Battlesnake will be eliminated, so you want to avoid that. And then also, if you collide with yourself, or if you collide with another snake, you are also eliminated. So here's a little example of a Battlesnake that's colliding with itself and being eliminated, but also if you run into another Battlesnake, you will also be eliminated. Those are sort of the 3 things that you want to watch out for, and those are really the core mechanics of the game. The one exception to the collisions rule is in the head-to-head case. So if two Battlesnakes, or 2 or more Battlesnakes, collide head-to-head, the longer one will survive. The strictly longer one will survive. So this means that there's advantages to eating food earlier on and gaining that length advantage, which means you can strategically go after and try to be more aggressive in your strategy, and possibly attempt to intentionally eliminate other Battlesnakes that are playing the game. Now, if both Battlesnakes are the same size, then both are actually eliminated. So the tiebreaker in this case is both get eliminated, and so you have to be strictly longer than in order to gain that advantage. The last Battlesnake left on the board wins the game. So it's very standard sort of survival rules. Every game has a winner, and there's no prizes, there's no points for second place. So you have to be the last surviving Battlesnake in order to be considered the winner of any given game. Here's an example of a trophy that we give out for some of our live events. We do live events all over the place at different times of the year. We're doing a lot of virtual events right now, but here's an example of some of the stuff we do in person. So that is really it in terms of rules and objectives. The game itself is actually quite straightforward and very simple, but the strategies that come out of it and the tactics that are used to implement those are can be very complex. And so let's talk about the API. Let's talk about how you as a Battlesnake developer are going to actually implement this and power your Battlesnake and give it the code to play the game on your behalf. So each Battlesnake is actually just a live web server that's hosted somewhere on the internet that implements the Battlesnake API. And so during a game, the Battlesnake game engine is going to make a series of requests, HTTP web requests to your server, to your Battlesnake, and the way that you respond to those requests will govern how your snake looks and how your snake behaves during the game. What this means is that your snake is ultimately represented by just a unique URL that implements this API. So it's very, very simple, very straightforward, but what's interesting about this is it means you can use any programming language, you can use any cloud platform, you can use any technology you want. If you want to use AI, if you want to use reinforcement learning, you can use anything to make that decision. So you just need to implement this HTTP API in order to play the game, and then how you actually implement that and the technologies you use is entirely up to you. We have developers that use 20 lines of JavaScript to power their snake, and they're successful. And then we also have developers that have been building that run multi-node distributed neural nets to make their decision and to look hundreds and hundreds of turns in advance in real time to make to power their Battlesnake. And so we have a full spectrum, and we see success at all levels, and it's really fun at all levels as well. So we encourage you to use whatever language you want, whatever language you're comfortable with, or whatever technologies you're looking to learn. Surprise us and do what's fun for you. That's always the goal here. The actual API, so you need to respond to 4 requests that you're going to get. The first one is just get at the root URL, and all you have to do there is return information about your Battlesnake. And this is going to include what color you want to be, what you want your head to look like, what you want your tail to look like, etc. The second command you need to listen for is a post to the /start URL, and this just signals the start of a game. So you don't need to reply to this, or it doesn't matter what you reply to this. You just need to, or this is just so that if you need to allocate resources or do any sort of coordination on your end to play the game, to get ready to play the game, this is your opportunity to do that. The third command is the post to /move. This command is where the bulk of your game logic is going to be. This is ultimately what you're implementing to play the game. So this command gets called once for every turn of the game, and how you respond to this command determines whether or not your snake goes up, down, left, or right on the next turn. So you're gonna get this. You're gonna get this called a lot, and this is the one that's going to control how your snake actually moves around the board. The last command is a post to /end, which just signals the end of the game. So every time a game that your Battlesnake was in ends, you're going to get a post to /end, and that's just to let you know that the game has ended. So if you want to run any analysis on how you lost, or you want to record your wins and your losses somewhere, or deallocate any resources, that's your opportunity to do that. I won't get into the full technical specs of these commands. You'll be able to see that in a minute. But I just want to do a high-level overview of what the move command looks like. So this is sort of a high-level pseudocode breakdown of the post to /move. So what will happen is every turn of the game you'll receive a payload that includes a unique game ID, so you can identify what game this turn is for, or this move is for. You'll receive a turn number, so you'll know what turn number of that game you are currently playing. You'll get information about the game board height and width, as well as all the other snakes, all the Battlesnakes that are playing the game, their exact locations, your own Battlesnake and its exact location, as well as food positions on the board. So that's an idea of the information you have to make your decision. You have full information of the game board, and all Battlesnakes are going to receive the exact same information on each turn. Your response then is going to be one of up, down, left, or right, and that's just to move. You're just saying, so what you're doing with this request is the engine's going to give you, here's what the game board looks like. Let us know where you want to move, and then all snakes will let it know, and then all snakes will move at the same time. The game board looks like this. It's oriented with the origin in the bottom left, so 0, 0 is in the bottom left, and it's all 0 indexed. So if your game board is 12 by 12, if your height is 12 and your width is 12, then your coordinates are going to go from 0 to 11, going ascending in the positive y-axis and ascending in the positive x-axis. That's pretty straightforward, and that should be how you expect it to be, but we just want to clarify that because it's important when you start programming and trying to locate things on the game board. So that's a really easy mistake to make is positioning the game board wrong and not thinking about this. So we just want to draw attention to that. Other technical notes. So to all the commands that your Battlesnake receives, you must reply with an HTTP 200. If you don't, there are consequences, and also you have 500 milliseconds to respond to every command that we send you, or the game engine sends you. So that means you have 500 milliseconds. That includes round trip latency, so it's 500 milliseconds from when we send the command to when we fully received your response. If that doesn't mean much to you, or you don't really know how to think about that, don't worry about it. Most cloud providers and hosting providers, and the one we're going to use today, Repl.it, won't have a problem responding in that time window. A typical response will be somewhere between 100 and 200 milliseconds. So you'd have to kind of go out of your way to kind of hit that capacity. Where the 500 milliseconds really matters is for sort of more advanced Battlesnake development, where you're trying to optimize and squeeze out every last millisecond of compute time that you have to make your decision. And so that's where that timeout really comes into play. So don't worry about it too much if you don't know how to operate around that. If your Battlesnake fails to do either of those two things, either return a 200 or return in time or respond in time, then we will either disqualify your Battlesnake depending on what state the game is in, or if we can, we'll just move your Battlesnake forward in the last direction it moved in. Even if that means that it will just be eliminated. So if you're in the top row and you've been moving up, and you fail to reply with a 500 instead of 200, then your Battlesnake will just move off the board, and be eliminated. So that's the consequence for not sort of abiding to by those rules. All of this is available in much more detail at docs.battlesnake.com, so you can check that out. It'll have a full technical documentation for all the payloads you get in each request, as well as how the timeouts work, and more information and tips and tricks for programming your snake. So I suggest you read that if you have any questions. This was just sort of a quick overview to give you an idea of what's going on. Let's take a look at the starter projects. So starter projects are open source repos that some of them are provided by us, the Battlesnake development team. Some of them are provided by Battlesnake developers within the community, and they're all available on GitHub. So if you go to, we'll do this. If you go to our docs, if you go to docs.battlesnake.com, on the left here, you'll see there's a starter projects. We can make this a little bit bigger. On the left, you'll see there's a starter projects link, and here are all of the official starter projects that we maintain, that we build, and that we provide. And there's one for Python, Go, JavaScript. There's a Java one and a Ruby one that need a little bit of updating, but they'll still work. It'll just be on a previous version of the API. But those should get updated quickly. And then the community starter projects are ones that the community has has built and put forward. So here you'll have options of different hosts or providers, or maybe some less common languages, such as, I think there's a Kotlin starter snake. There's one using TypeScript and Deno, which is cool. And there's a machine learning starter snake that was actually made by the team at AWS. So that one uses AWS SageMaker to get you started with reinforcement learning. So if you want to go down the AI and the reinforcement learning path, there's a starter project for you there, as well as full documentation for how to use it. We also accept pull requests. So if you have a starter project that you're proud of or you want to show off, we're happy to add it to this list, assuming it sort of matches our criteria. But we're going to look at the JavaScript starter project specifically. So let's open that up, and you'll see here, we can get into the live tutorial now. You'll see here on the JavaScript starter project, there's a whole bunch of files. A lot of it is just like GitHub license, like a Heroku proc file, a Repl.it file. This is all just stuff just for running your code. Really, there's only one file of code here. It's this index.js. Here's what it looks like. We'll take a closer look in a second. And then there's also, every starter project comes with a pretty well documented README for getting started using that starter project. So in this case, the README talks about, it says it comes ready to use with Repl.it. It can also be deployed to Heroku or any other provider you like. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and just try to deploy this to Repl.it. I think that'll be quickest and most interesting. If you're just getting started with Battlesnake, or you're just getting started as a web developer, Repl.it is a really good option for this. But don't feel like you have to use it. You can use any provider you want, but Repl.it will get you up and running pretty quickly, especially if you just want to try it out and see if you enjoy it, see if you're having fun. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's take a look at what we'll do is we'll walk through the README. It says technology is used, so it's using JavaScript. Obviously, it's using Node.js to run your JavaScript on a server. If you're familiar with JavaScript web programming or backend programming, you're familiar with Node.js. And then Express is the web server that we use. So that just does the the sort of connection between accepting and handling the web requests and sending responses back. Don't worry too much about those if you don't know what they are. It doesn't really matter that much, but if you're curious what's kind of going on under the hood, those are the libraries we're using. The starter projects, we intentionally tried to minimize the number of dependencies that are going on, just to make them as simple as possible to understand and to extend upon later. So following through the README, there's the list of prerequisites. We need a Battlesnake account, which we have. I have a fresh one right here ready to go. So that's great. We need a Repl.it account, which I have here on the right-hand side. And we need a GitHub account, which we actually have. The GitHub account is optional. You don't need it. But if you connect GitHub to Battlesnake and you connect GitHub to Repl.it, there's a whole bunch of niceties that go along with that. So I would recommend it, but you definitely don't need it to get going. So let's try to actually use this starter project to build a Battlesnake that plays the game. So we're going to go through the next steps here. It says log into your Repl.it account. We've done that. It says create a REPL and select import from GitHub. So I'm going to say new REPL, import from GitHub. And it says just use this URL, paste the URL for this GitHub repo. So here's the URL here, or you can just take it out of the URL bar. We'll do this, and then there we go. So that should work. So this is now what Repl.it's doing is it's taking that code from that starter repo, it's pulling it to our own REPL, and it's queuing it up and getting it ready to run. There we go. Okay. So it says once your REPL is ready to run, click run at the top of the screen, and we should see Express and any other dependencies get installed. So let's try that. We're just going to hit run. That's not working. Let's do... Oh, I know why it's not working. Okay, if you do this on your own, it'll work. You should just be able to hit run, and then if I do npm start, that'll kick it off. All right, so that's got it going. So we're able to run our REPL now. It says once installation is complete, your Battlesnake server will start. And you should see the following: Battlesnake server listening at sweet. Okay, so this example app listening at 127. Perfect. So above the terminal window, we should see the live output from our Battlesnake server, including its URL. That is, just rearrange these things here. That is this bit right here. So we see that code. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. That's what we should see. So this means your Battlesnake is running correctly on Repl.it. Awesome. So that's going now. Now we're ready to actually enter game. So once you're able to get your code onto Repl.it and run it and get it going, that's all you need to do in order to play games on battlesnake.com. So I'm going to go over here to Battlesnake. What we're going to do is create a new Battlesnake and point it to this REPL, and then use it to play the game. So I'm going to say create new Battlesnake. We're going to call it getting started with JavaScript and Repl.it. You should give it a better name than that, but that's what we're going to call this for now. And then for URL, what you want to do is you want to take the URL that Repl.it is using to host your code. So that's the code there. This is just a standard URL. Like if you go, if you just put it in your browser, you'll get the same response that Repl is showing you here. Description, we'll say live programmed as part of JavaScript tutorial. My project URL. So this is if you want to, if your project is open source, if your Battlesnake is open source, you can provide the URL to your either GitHub project or your GitHub repo or your REPL if you wanted to share it publicly. It's cool to do this. A lot of developers in our community actually choose to do this because they like to share ideas and share their algorithms that they're using to have interesting discussions and collaborate with other developers. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. That's entirely up to you. You can also tag your Battlesnake with different technologies. So We can tag it with Repl.it. We can tag it with JavaScript. And just show off to other developers what technologies we're using to power our Battlesnake. Again, optional. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, it's a neat sort of community participation thing. And then this checkbox, allow anyone to add this snake to a game. This, if you check this, then it means that anyone on Battlesnake.com can run your or can run a game against your Battlesnake, and so they can enter your Battlesnake into their own games and play their Battlesnakes versus yours. It's fun to check this box. You'll get in a lot more games, and you'll also be up against much more random opponents. We're gonna leave it unchecked for now, just for the purpose of the tutorial. So we'll go ahead and hit save. We'll see, okay, success message. We got Battlesnake was successfully created. We got some information here. So here's what our Battlesnake currently looks like. JavaScript, Repl.it, API v1. So we're on v1 of the API, which is good. That's what we want to be using. So it recognized the version that we're using, and it also says that our latency is pretty strong. So we're averaging 171 milliseconds latency. So we'll take that. That means we're well below that 500 limit, so we don't need to worry about it too much. What we can do now is we can click into that snake and we can say, create game with getting started. We can create a game with this snake in particular. So I'm just going to click that. And it's going to take me to the game creation screen. Here I can add a whole bunch of snakes to my game. I can configure my board size if I want to. Right now I've got one Battlesnake in the game. It's the one I just made, so that's good enough for now. If I wanted to, I could search for public snakes. So for other developers that have made their Battlesnake public, I could search for them if I know the one I'm looking for. Or if I wanted to, I could just hit this button and it would add a random public Battlesnake to the game as well. This is kind of a fun button to use if you're looking for, if you're just looking for opponents, or you just want to see how your Battlesnake operates in different scenarios. So we're gonna go ahead. So right now we just have the one. We're gonna go ahead and hit start game. And so, okay, so here we have a brand new game of Battlesnake that's been started. We can hit play to watch what happens. Okay, so our Battlesnake moves around and then eventually it collides with itself, it says. So that's fine. We haven't even looked at what this is doing or how this is moving yet, but it's working. It's getting responses from the server. You can see here in Repl that I'm getting output from my code, which is perfect. So this all means that everything's working correctly. Let's go back to the README. Yeah, so it says we watch the Repl logs. We can see that it's moving. That's wonderful. So now let's start. Before we start looking at how our Battlesnake moves, let's customize the appearance of our Battlesnake. That's a really easy way to just make sure that you understand how the code's working and how the API works. So it says locate the handle index function inside index.js. So we're going to go here. We're going to go to our code. I'm going to open index.js. I'm going to, here's the handle index function. And it says you should see a line that looks like this, var Battlesnake info. Yep, okay, so we see that. It says this function is called by the game engine periodically to make sure your Battlesnake is healthy, responding correctly, and determine how your Battlesnake will appear on the game board. Awesome, so you can see here we're choosing a color, a head, a tail. There's an author parameter if we wanted to provide that. Let's pick a color and a head and a tail. So I'm gonna click this Battlesnake personalization link here. And this will take me to the docs, and the docs talk about what these parameters mean. You can read through this on your own and get a good sense of what you can actually do. But basically, you can pick a hex code color to represent what color you want your Battlesnake to be, and then you can also pick a head and a tail from a list of options that we provide. There we go. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so for color, let's just take this purple here. That's good enough for me. And so I'm in my code. I'm in my REPL in my code. I'm just gonna highlight that and swap out for the color I want. For head and tail, you can see here's a whole bunch of options that we allow. that are built into the system. We try to release new heads and tails for big events that we run, usually like once or twice a year. So there's a whole bunch of different things. There's some standard stuff. There's some winter themed heads and tails. There's some stay home and code themed heads and tails. Let's take the caffeine. Actually, let's take the gamer. We're gonna take the gamer head, and I like the coffee tail, so we'll take those ones. We'll put those in. We'll Repl will save the file for us, and then we will. Well, actually, let's do it back to the docs. Yeah, so it says restart. Yeah, so once we make those changes, what we can do is we can restart our Repl. And you'll see here, right here in the live preview, that our color's been like our server is now responding with a new color, responding with a new head, responding with a new tail. So I can go over to Battlesnake. Do this. I can go to this list here where I see my Battlesnake, and I can hit refresh. So if I hit refresh, the game engine will requery my Battlesnake, asking it what it wants to look like. So there we go. Actually, let's not use the coffee. Let's not use the coffee tail. It's a little bit hard to understand what's going on there. Let's just use a sharp tail. You can refresh again. There we go. Okay, so now we have our gamer head. We have our sharp tail. Our latency is still looking pretty good, under 100 milliseconds. Now, if I go to my game, so this is the game that we created before just to test it. What we can do is you can actually, there we go. There's this create rematch button here. So I could create a new game going through this screen, like click here and then create a new game with the game creation. Or if you have a game that's already been run, you can just hit rematch. And what that will do is create a brand new game with your snake again, using new positions and a new random seed and whatnot, with the same configuration. So this will have the updated color and head and tail. So I can run this game and see immediately that all that's working. So I'm the right color. I got the tail that I want. I have the head that I want. So that's awesome. I still collide with myself, but that's okay. We haven't tried to make it not collide with itself yet. We've just tried to make it look better. So now I've got a better looking snake. Let's see what it's doing, because it's not very smart. It's not doing much. It just keeps kind of running around and colliding with itself. So if we go back to the README, it says changing behavior on every turn of each game. Your Battlesnake receives information about the game board and must decide its next move. It says locate the handle move function inside index.js. So here it is, right here on line 35. Possible moves are up, down, left, or right. So let's look at what our Battlesnake is actually doing. So it's saying possible moves is up, down, left, right, and then it's setting move to it's randomly select. That's what's happening. So it's randomly selecting one of these moves from this array, setting it as move, and then it's replying with that move, and it's logging the move out, which is why we see this output down here. So that explains why we're not doing super well, right? If you look, like if we watch the game, if we restart it, like if you look at the logs, it says we go up, right, 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 and then left. Let's close this here. It goes up, right, 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 and then left. So we go up, right, 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 and then left, and we collide with ourselves. So I don't think the random strategy is super good, because we just end up running into ourselves. So let's try to do something else. Let's what if we just make it move in like one constant direction and see what that looks like. Let me just move this mic here. There we go. So instead of saying move equals random possible move, what if we said move equals, let's just go left. What if we just went left? Here we go. we don't need this one either. Let's restart our REPL. Go here, say create rematch. And start the game. Okay. Okay, so we changed it to just be the hard-coded left. We restarted our server, I hit rematch, and then our Battlesnake went left. Let's try another game and just make sure that's happening. You can see here in the logs it's going left a lot. And there it goes. So it goes left and immediately runs off the board. Okay, great. So we can now control how our snake is moving. I bet, like, if I just say down and then I restart, create a new game, we're just going to go down. So there we go. So now it's responding. It's doing what I want. It's doing what I'm telling it to do in my code. Let's try. Let's try doing something more interesting. So if you go back to the README, it says developing your Battlesnake further. Here are some early goals, and so it just has some ideas for where you can take your Battlesnake next. The first goal is to avoid walls, avoid yourself, move towards food, avoid other snakes. Let's just try to avoid walls for now. Let's see if we can do that. And then maybe we'll call the tutorial there. So if we want to, if this is the game, if we want to avoid that wall, then we need to know when we're on that bottom row. Like, we need to know when we're here. And so the way I want to do that, I think, is if our head y coordinate is 0, right? Like if we're in this bottom row, then we don't want to go down. Then down is a bad decision. So let's say var moves down if I gotta remember how to do JavaScript. If game data, so game data is all the information we get. If you want to know what's in this exactly, you can go look at the docs and it will tell you, it'll break it down for you. But I know that if game data dot I think it's u.head.x equals 0. Sorry, y. If y is 0, we're on that bottom row. Then we want move equals, then we'll go left instead. Okay, let's try that. See what happens. Okay, so you can see from the logs we go down, 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 and then left. We're on the game, down, 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 and then left. Awesome. So that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to move down unless we're in that bottom row, and then we want to move left. And then we ran off the edge of the board. So let's add another clause here that says if gamedata.u.head.x equals 0, move equals up. So if we're in this corner, let's just move up instead of going left. Sweet, okay. So you can see we go down. I'll do it slowly. So we go down, 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 all the way to the bottom row, all the way to the left column, and then we go up all the way to the top corner, and then we run off the board. Awesome. So that's the early sort of, that is one way to avoid walls. There's a couple other ways to avoid walls too, but that's a really straightforward, very simple way to avoid walls, to choose which way to move. There's a couple other ways to do this. Let's, there's one that I really like. There's like an early strategy that I really like. Something you can do is if you go up, right, down, left. Okay. So what if we just wanted to, instead of moving down and then moving left and doing whatever, what if we just wanted to spin in a circle? Like we just want our Battlesnake to spin in a circle. So what we want to do is we want to go up and then right and then down and then left and then up and then right and then down and left and just cycle like that forever on every turn. So we can go set up our possible moves in the order we want to do it in, and then we can say move equals possible moves at, and we know that game data tells us what turn we're on. So if we use the turn number to decide which index in this array we're gonna get our turn from. It should get us what we want. So we can go game data dot, I think it's just game data dot turn. Mod 4. That might just work. Yeah, okay, there we go. So I run the game. There we go. We just spin. Our Battlesnake now just spins in a circle until it eventually runs out of health and then gets eliminated. You can see it lasted 103 turns because at some point early on it actually happened to pick up that first food, and so it grew to length 4. But yeah. Okay, so that's really interesting. That's another strategy or another tactic for programming your snake. And instead of like detecting where the walls are, just be like, okay, well, I'm only going to stay in this one square, in this starting square. Hopefully that gives you some ideas for where you can take this from here. You can start looking at, like it says here, where your head is. You can look at where your body is and then try to avoid it as well. You can also, look at where food is and start moving. You can use like pathfinding algorithms or other sort of grid-based math or two-dimensional math to figure out how to move to the closest food. There's a bunch of different ways you can start programming your snake from here, but this is kind of the core piece, right? So we've got we took one of the starter projects using JavaScript. We got it running on Repl, which is awesome, and we got our Battlesnake working, and we did it all in about maybe half an hour or so, which isn't bad. And now we could actually program this to be competitive. So I think let's do this. I think we're going to end the stream, the tutorial stream there. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to try making a Battlesnake on your own, check it out. It's play.battlesnake.com. If you want to get involved in any of the upcoming competitions or events that we run, it's all available on at play.battlesnake.com/events. You'll see all the things that we're running. And we also have global arenas that anyone can join at any time, and they'll just constantly run games and then rank your snakes based on how well you're doing against other opponents worldwide. So check it out. It's cool. It's fun. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully this will get you programming and playing around with some cool strategies and algorithms. So my name is Brad, and I'll see you later.